And good evening. This is part one of my next Armada set of painting project that I'm working on. I will be painting my invisible hand as a Rebel Providence Class Dreadnought. In previous videos, you might have seen that I have sketched an idea of how I want to paint it. And now I'm going to start with opening the box, getting the model out, and doing a little bit of prep work as to how I am going to turn this into that. So first off, obviously, we're going to need to open it up. Remove the plastic as best as possible. Okay. Model's open from the top. Doesn't matter about the card just at this stage. There we have it. So obviously my printout is not exactly to scale, unfortunately, but gives you an idea of what I'm going to do. Now, I have thought a little bit about what I want to do in terms of how I'm going to paint it. Some sections I'm going to simply just overpaint it with colours. Other sections I'm actually going to tape off. So first off, I'm going to tape off the front. As you can see, what I'm planning on doing is the front beak is going to be completely red. So what I want to be able to do is use some painter's tape, bit thick, but I'll cut it in half and like cover all of this section around here, getting it to the point where it's pretty much covered except those exposed areas that I want. Now, using something like a painter's tape is useful for doing a job like this, as it's actually supposed to be used for painting projects. Not so much models, but certainly other types of jobs around the house, etc. And it's generally readily available. So, using strips of paint, of the paint tape that I've got, I'm going to mark down where I want that actual paint go. Now, obviously there's going to be spiky bits and stuff like that, so just ripping it off and tearing it into smaller and smaller parts is ideal. using something like a small knife, like a smaller craft knife, to take extra bits off can be useful as well. If you can't get it perfectly on your actual model, then there's the possibility that the paint may actually go into places where you don't want it to go. So, just by trimming it ever so slightly, continuing to cover up more and more of the areas that you want affected. Up until you get to a point where it's pretty much done. So, now you'll notice that I'm pressing down with my nail. Using the back end of the knife can also help to make sure that it's nice and snuck in, especially around, as you can see, there's a curve with it. There's a section right here which I can't get to. So by just snipping off ever so slight little bits, and as you can see now, I've covered that section. Now, so I'm doing the nose. The panels underneath I don't mind. The other section I'm going to be doing is this broad section right here. So I'm going to have some long tape covering everything. So it'll be this section from here all the way forward in a red. So I might take it to this line here, which means that line is going to be my starting point for this spray, that section of spray. It sometimes can be a little bit boring doing this sort of prep stuff. On the other hand, it's very important that you get the prep work done right. So to cover at least all of this. From that end, that blue panel, because we won't want much in the way of blue panels. All the way up. Now, if it doesn't want to sit right, well then just have to sort of mold it to actually sit right. And then for like tiny slithers, you can either use very small strips of tape, like so. I have heard of some people using things like blue tack just to cover those areas that they don't want. And yeah, blue tack works. As you can see, just by using my nail, I'm getting into that crease where I don't want the paint to exist. So, this section will be all red. This bridge will remain as is, although it might be a bit difficult to paint. I do intend to hold all of the shuttle bay as is, which is why I'm going to seal this section up with the paint, with the masking tape as well. Any bits I have left over, I just use where I can. And of course there's going to be sections where you cannot get it 100% right. And that's when you need to use a bit of ingenuity to actually get it as reasonably close as possible. Yep, so keep going. If, for example, you've got this section right here that should be painted but has been exposed, been covered by the actual tape, you can get your knife and just sort of make a very small sharping, and that way you can pull it off like so. There you go. So now it looks pretty good in that slot right there. Now, obviously, we are going to have sections that are going to be needed to go over multiple times when we get to the spray paint part. And there's going to be sections that are going to be literally too difficult for myself to actually paint in any reasonable way. One of them is going to be this control tower. It's going to be a nightmare for me to repaint. So I'm going to seal it off completely, but I'm going to do it in a way that will protect as much of it as possible. How? By folding it something like this. So you can see that with the tape, what I'm doing is that I'm molding it down. Yes, it is sticking to itself, but it can go very easily to unstick itself. But it's now protecting all of that control bridge area. And of course, if you want to clean it up, take a snip out. There you go. Now, yes, it does look ugly. Yes, there's gaps, but that's where you go over with the next set of tape. Get it ever so closer. Like so. Now, what paint am I planning on doing for this? Well, I've determined that I want to do the paint in a red format, but I still want to keep as much of the actual coloration from the ship as is. So what I'm thinking of painting is in a grey for this back area. But seeing what I want to do for the front is more of a white colour. I'm going to attempt to do this bridge area in a white. Okay, a few more strips. Just coming up that back com tower or gunnery emplacement. And that's it. Now I'm going to do this bottom section also painted. In a white because it'll also end up being yellowed. There we have it. So I'm going to take this out now, give it a coat of spray paint and leave it to dry for a while. Stay tuned. So here I am out in my garage about to do spray painting. So I'm going to do a white section here so that when I paint it red it's quite vibrant. Also white here because that area is also going to be red and also some grey. I'll also be spray painting this area right here in white because that will have some yellow and also red. I'll only do one side at the moment because it'll take me a little bit of a while to shift it around. But meanwhile, making sure that my spray paint is consistent. Okay. And that's pretty much about it. Don't want to go too much further with it especially until it dries. Then you know how much the paint has actually covered.
So I've removed all the paint tape. You can see that the front has gone pretty well. There's some sections around here that the paint has bled through. Here as well. And there. But most of the stuff I could probably clean up fairly easily with doing just some light greys. Nothing too major, which is good. Yeah. I do intend to get rid of both of these symbols, but what I'm thinking of doing is just leaving them on it for now, getting a decal made of the Rebel symbol and like stick it over the top. That's one option, so that you can see the Separatist symbol behind it, or like they just couldn't be bothered to repaint the whole thing. Or I might actually go ahead and do the whole paint job again. These sections I'm going to black out. Yeah, and other than that, yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, let's just get a little bit of paint on, and let's see about getting some cleaning done. If it looks like it's going to be too difficult to take off, well, then my option is to like repaint it in those alternate colors that I've got. And that's coming off slowly. Yeah, like that. Slowly cleaning it up. This bleed through effect of the spray paint will always be there, no matter what sort of spray paint you use or what sort of tape you use, simply because it's more of the way the spray paint is, it is designed to force itself to go in places. And unless you really use like a dry brush, a very controlled system like a airbrush system, yeah, you will get bleed through all places. You can see that I've got a bit of up here and up underneath, but again, I'll be able to take care of most of that by just sort of playing upon the colors of what's around it. You'll also notice that I never got rid of these markings down along here. That will be for later, that I plan on doing something along for them. Alright, let's get some red happening. And then I will show you what it's going to look like once I've finished. So So that's the front bit done. Side bit, you'll notice that I haven't fully painted all of it in that red. I'm mainly just going to concentrate on doing those ridges as shown. Same again. And then what I'll do is I'll go back through and blend those colors back in by using grey tones. To get it look appropriate. Of course, there's got to be a lot of care taken when doing a job like this, that you don't overpaint. And you also want to get the coloration just right, in that you don't want it to be too streaky. Like some paints, when you put them on, they can go a little bit too much, like they actually look like paint rather than actually a color choice. Getting in all those nooks and crannies. And also specifically just blending the colors so that it's one tonal color rather than multi-tone. And there you see it. Yeah, that's step one. I'll just do the last bit today. Is to do this on the side in a red. But leave the top section still wide, as I plan on doing that in that yellow or orange tone. Now, when painting ships like this, there's no real method to the madness, I guess, in terms of where color belongs, how thick, how vibrant, or any of that needs to be. It's all personal choice, simply because it is ours as the painter's interpretation. But anyway, that's it for this paint job. I will now leave that to dry
then go back and start doing further cleaning. Stay tuned. So, now that the paint has dried on my Providence class, as you can see, I've painted the nose red, this section red, a couple of the panels in orange, some blue ink has been applied in here. Next step is now to put ink on, just to show off the lines and the actual separation between the sections. So getting in nice and close. For this, I'll be using Null oil. I find it's easier to work with, and just watering it down with some water. So all I need to do is just go over the lines a bit. By doing this, ensures that it highlights those areas, making sure that using it watered down gets into all of those creases that you want it to still look like it's separated. If it goes over a little bit, like that, just using a little bit of blotting paper or tissue paper will help to suck that up. Again, use a bit of water if you need to diffuse it. This was the other main reason why I choose to do that white undercoat. Doing a black undercoat would have meant that it would have been a lot harder to get the nice red colouring than to try and again get any sort of definition between the panels would be a bit more difficult, as the coloration does disappear from black, being able to give any sort of clear definition on those panels. Yeah, just like so. see, although this one's a bit messy at the moment, I'll clean that up in a minute. The rest of them are much more clearly defined. We do the same with the nozzle section. Letting that ink run along that crease, because obviously that's where water or any liquid wants to go. It wants to go into its recesses. There we have it. Now again, it still looks a little bit heavy on the ink at the moment. So we'll just pull a little bit off in a minute. Using that idea of using the blotting paper. Just very lightly dab. As you can see, that's coming up a treat. Let's do that other section. And there you have it. I've already inked the other side of it, as you can see. So other than getting a set of decal paper and printing up a Rebel symbol for my sides here, that's about it. So the next time you'll see this Providence, it'll be out on the table, and I'll be giving a battle report on it. So, from Aussie Stern, happy gaming, and I will catch you in the near future. Goodbye for now.